Welcome to my channel where we talk about cool cars, cool technology, and alternative fuels. Welcome back to the 1984 Lincoln Town Car. This car has 30,000 trouble-free miles on it since you've last seen it, and a myriad of upgrades, new features, and a new control board system. I'll bring you along and show you all about it. So up front here, the first thing you see is a control module, of course. That is for the new four-wheel, four-channel ABS system that this car now has. So none of these cars, none of the box body Panthers were ever offered with ABS, but I took some parts from a later model Panther car and combined those parts with my new control board system and put ABS on this car. So this car has a bit of a suspension rake like this, where the front wheels, or rather the front of the car sits higher than the back of the car. And so in wet weather, when you try to stop, the front wheels immediately lock up. And so put ABS on it, and now it stops in a straight line every time, even in the wettest of conditions on slick asphalt roads. Speaking of the control boards that I had to design to interface the ABS system with everything else that was already in the car, you're looking right at them. It's these two boxes right here with the USB cords attached to them. Still have the diagnostic cords hooked up in case I need to make quick changes to them. These control boards are Arduino based. There's 5 of them in this car, and they replace the giant piece of plywood that was in the trunk with all the Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and all that screwed to it and all the wires coming into it and everything like that. So everything's kind of been spread out in the car. All of them are connected on the CAN bus network. They also have the capability to be hooked together via Bluetooth or hooked to other devices like a cell phone or a tablet, which you'll see inside, over Bluetooth. They also have Wi-Fi capability. None of these boards have that enabled, but I have another project where I've been testing that, and it's worked flawlessly for about 6 months now. These boards, like I said, they're Arduino based, and so they have Arduino Mega based, and so they have 15 analog inputs. They have 6 onboard relays. They're very similar to Chrysler TIPMs or Nissan IPDMs, where it's a printed circuit board that has built-in relays. These also have built-in fuses as well for those relays, so that you don't need an external fuse box for the onboard relays. There's also drivers on board that can drive external relays, so should you need a higher ampacity relay, for instance, to drive something like the radiator fan. So like I said, all these control modules have CAN bus capability, so that means they're all communicating with each other. The ones up front here, one of them controls the front lighting and the radiator fan, all the accessories that need control, so they like air conditioning. It also measures a few of the sensors that are on the front of the engine. And the other control module interfaces with the ECM. Of course, the ECM controls all the fuel injection stuff for the engine. And my control module that's interfacing with the ECM gets all of the data from the engine control module that you would want to see on, say, your dashboard, or that maybe some of the other control modules need in order to do what they need to do, like maybe vehicle speed, or what's the engine RPM to switch this on or off, or something like that. So that's what these 2 control modules are doing. We'll talk about what the rest of them do in just a little bit, but before we get there, let's talk about the engine, the heart of the beast. It's the same 5-liter high-output V8 from the 95 Mustang that was in there last time. I've done a little bit of upgrades to it. There were a few just kind of maintenance items that needed to be done that were a little bigger than, say, an oil change. The throttle body had an issue. I believe that for some reason air was bypassing the throttle plate. Whether the throttle plate was bent or the shaft was bent, I'm not exactly sure, but I replaced the throttle body and the air was no longer being bypassed, so that has been taken care of. So now the thing gets way better fuel economy because, in essence, the throttle was permanently stuck open and the engine computer was having a real tough time figuring out what was going on. So that's been taken care of. Also, the power steering pressure has been increased just a little bit. No physical changes, same pump, same gearbox, but just increase the pressure a little bit so that when the engine's at low RPM and you're trying to do low-speed parking maneuvers, the steering is just a little bit lighter and you can maneuver a little bit easier. The radiator fan has also been upgraded. It's the same fan as well, but like I mentioned, I now have control module up here, and so I can control that speed of that radiator fan instead of it just being on-off, and that's exactly what I've got going on here. It has a control module, a radiator fan control module, I should say, from a late model Crown Vic, and that radiator fan control module, which is basically just a glorified motor controller, is being controlled by my control boards up here. Further back, the same thing is going on with the HVAC blower over in the corner, the left corner over there. There is now a speed controller on that versus a resistor pack. That's also out of a later model Crown Vic, and it's being controlled by, yet again, my control modules. They receive commands from a control module underneath the dash that reads the position of the switch inside and tells the blower fan out here what speed you'd like to select. So that way you can program what speed you want associated with low, medium, and high on the selector inside versus it just being whatever the low resistor, whatever the medium resistor, and whatever full speed is on the motor. So fully programmable. We'll move on to the inside now. That's pretty much all there is underneath the hood. Just those two control modules and a few little upgrades here and there otherwise. All right, so inside the interior, not much has changed. However, the dashboard has significantly changed, and what's behind the dashboard has significantly changed. So, like I mentioned, there are two more control modules in here, and they receive all the inputs from things like your switch stalks, your HVAC control panel, that sends commands to the control module. Also the instrument cluster, which I will show you here. We've got a little bit different instrument cluster. You see on the left-hand side is the tablet that was sitting over here last time that was displaying the camera feeds. Now it's displaying the gauges in the instrument cluster. I went with a little bit different gauge design, although it is the same app. It's just an Android app. If you remember last time, I had some Raspberry Pis in the trunk of the car, and along with a bunch of other stuff back there, was controlling some screens that were up here. Now I've just got a tablet doing the same thing. Got a few upgrades other than just changing the actual picture. The graphics are a little bit different. I've got sound effects for things like the turn signals, the door. Let's see if I can hit the door jam switch. There we go, got sound effects for that. And it'll also give you a warning chime if you pop the trunk. Trunk's already popped, so it hasn't given us a warning chime since it's already open. Got a digital Prindle display, which was different than last time. That was still analog, along with the speedometer in the middle. Of course, on the right, I've got two screens, and they are now showing the cameras. And the cameras are in a different location. They're right here. I'll stick my hand in front of it. Right there. So they're right there in that little black box. And there's one on each side of the car, just at the base of each mirror. And those are your blind spot cameras. So all the values that are displayed by the tablet there are generated from the control modules that are underneath the dash. There's one right underneath there, and then there's one that's like buried back down in there sideways. Those control modules collect data off the CAN bus network from the other modules in the car and display all the information there, like the Prindle and speed and TAC and all that. For instance, just of how one thing works, so you have an idea of kind of the topology of the network. If you hit the turn signal switch, of course we see there's an indicator and a chime there, but when you hit that switch, the control module underneath the dash sees that you've hit the switch. It sends a signal back to the control module in the trunk, says, hey, we got a turn signal request. That control module starts a timer and starts pulsing and gives the turn signal pulse, sends that over the data network. A module in the front of the car receives it, and the module underneath the dash receives it. So the one up front starts blinking the light, and the one in here tells the tablet to start flashing the little indicator. And all that happens in the blink of an eye in a split second. Over here, same standard HVAC controls. Those are just driven to the control module underneath the dash, and that's also put on the network, sent out front where it needs to go. Not much else. There are a few features of this dash that I like. I don't know if you'll be able to hear this, but I don't know if you hear some motor noise. So those motors that you heard, those are the cutouts. This car, if you remember, had cutouts before, but now I can touch the dashboard and they operate. Same thing, I can touch the word trunk. I won't do it since it's already open, but I can touch the word trunk, it'll pop the trunk. I can touch the antennas and that'll roll up and down the power antenna in the back. And here's another one I can show you. I can touch this icon right there. You just heard a click and now it turns on. That actually disables the ABS in case I need to. And I can just tap the D in the Prindle and it'll turn back on. You just heard the click again. So a few hidden buttons in there that I can use. Everything else is controlled by the standard stalks. I tend to like physical buttons better, but the physical buttons are just connected to the control module underneath that then puts everything on the data network. All right, so moving to the back of the vehicle, we're getting to the end of the things. We're actually at the end of the data network. This is right where the data network stops. There's one more control module that controls everything basically behind the back seat. So lighting, fuel pump, rear defogger, starter solenoid. The battery is still in the trunk over there. It's not perfectly covered up by the carpet. But speaking of carpet, it has carpet. And there is a space for a spare tire. All the giant control module mess that was back here is now gone, and of course spread out over the car through all the different little bitty control modules. Not much else going on back here. We got the power antenna, we got the fuse box here for the high power stuff, so like the rear defogger and fuel pump. But that is about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour of the Lincoln. I look forward to many more videos on this car and other projects. Thank you very much.